Morning,
Good
everyone.
morning, beautiful people of the internet, and welcome to another Super Sunday Supplement special. Joined once again by the lovely Helen Chorley, magnificent Adam Lawrence, the superb Piotr Grusenek, and myself, Jay Howard. As we always do with these talks, we start off with Adam's Sunday Supplement. If you're not aware of what that is, where have you been, first of all? But secondly, you'll find it plastered all across Facebook. I think he's now putting it on to LinkedIn as well. He may have been doing that from the beginning. But you'll be able to go onto his page or the Partners in Property page. I think it normally ends up there or starts there first. And you can go through, there's a whole back catalogue for at least the last year that this has been going on. And it's pretty much released every Sunday morning. And it starts off our conversation. So we basically talk about where Adam's head is, because it is the brain of Britain. And then we kind of expand and go on journeys from there. So Adam, do you want to kick off this week?
I thought I'd give us a bit of food for thought this week. Yeah. So it's inevitably turned into a bit of a. Jay managed to do the intro without mentioning Jordan Peterson, but we might as well get it out of the way. Rather than 12 rules for life, I always like to try and give you a bit more. So 25% interest on the 12 rules for life. Inflationary times, you've got to look at it. This is what's got to be done. So I've basically taken my take on stress, partially pressure that you feel when you're in, I suppose, time-restricted deadline situations, property in general. One of the guys who is in our boardroom club said to me, it was a couple of months ago now, and he said, you write all this great stuff. I love reading what you write. I was like, thanks very much. That's really good to hear. He said, but you never talk about how hard it is, and I thought, well, I wouldn't want to misrepresent. I do try and be fairly clear that it's not easy, and I think we all know if it was easy, everyone would do it, and that's a pretty good cliche / analogy / whatever you want to call it. But he says you never really open up about it. And I don't think people don't in general, or well, maybe the last 5 years, I think the world has really improved around a lot of this sort of stuff. 5 years ago, it would have been, wow, that's showing weakness, really, doing a post like that, isn't it? Whereas now it's people read it, I think, and they're much more like, yeah, I can identify with some or all of that. If you don't identify with any of it, well done, you're a robot. Congratulations for convincing people you're a human being. But you know what? I was going to say that
we know some of them, don't we?
that is timely. Where instead of there's a famous book about trading that I tell people to read when they are, because there's a few classic books about trading, but there's this good book on trading called The Hour Between Dog and Wolf, and I think I might write one called The Hour Between Robot and Sociopath on the back of that comment, Helen, actually, because that's a good shout. So basically a little bit of I've been doing a bit of survival kit stuff, I suppose, for the economy and inflation and what to do with portfolios and trades and property assets and stocks and what to expect, because I think it's important to manage expectations. And this is more of a survival kit for, as and when things hit the fan, because you can see things starting to accelerate. I'm still reasonably surprised about the number of people that I'm talking to who are just sort of like, oh, is the interest rate going to go up a lot more? And it's like, well, the market certainly thinks it is quite a lot, quite quickly, yeah. And they're like, oh, I would have thought, maybe they'll give it a rest next month. I don't think they will. I don't think they will. They're talking about going up in 0.5% increments instead of 0.25% increments, if that gives you a rough idea of where things are at the moment. And that just in itself will make other things happen, won't it? And then at the end, we'll get into that. If anybody wants to pick on one of the specific Mighty 15, then we will do. But then at the end, I've also just tried to have my cake and eat it, and then eat it again, really, by coining a phrase that I think is going to become, it is going to become famous, because I'm going to write about it loads, and I'm just going to keep writing until I become famous. but I've called it bazooka economics because it's very Boris Johnson. This whole, let's just we'll sort this out. This cost of living crisis. Well, they won't. They won't because you can't. And this is not the monetary school of economics conservative way. The temporary targeted energy profits levy, as it drips off the tongue, is the basically the equivalent of getting a big bazooka and firing it at the problem when the problem is something you really would be better off using a sniper rifle to target. And obviously that has consequences. And politically, you could say, well, what a genius move, because they've taken Labour's best policy and they've used it and they've spoiled the spoiler of all of that. But we seem to have skipped over the bit where it needs to actually work, which is slightly problematic. So lots and lots about stress and pressure and coping mechanisms and the big things that are really important to me in there. And I probably could have gone on and done another 15, but back to Mr. Peterson, that he just did the other book, didn't he? So that's fine. So maybe I've lined up a little mini series there or something like that. The 15 pillars of stress management, maybe something like that. I don't know. I've got enough pillars at the moment, but we'll work on it. We'll work on the working title, if you like, Jay.
You're building your own Colosseum off these pillars, Mr. Lawrence. I loved the post because it's one of these kind of if you do it wrong, it comes off all kind of fluffy and frou-frou-y and gimmicky and buzzwordy, and if you do it right, it creates a fair bit of impact and it gets you thinking. And I shared a little story on there of someone I used to work with. I replied to made a comment about you put in there something about a piece of coal turning into a diamond, and a chap I used to work with would get so stressed and so like high pressure in his thinking, and everything would go wrong and everything was a big deal. I used to tell people, if you stuck a lump of coal up his ass in an hour, you'd get a diamond. That's how high pressured he is. And it was true, like every single time without failure. And the worst part is, it's kind of like following on from one of the other things that you said, if it's easy, everyone will do it. It's kind of for me, it's the old adage, you can't teach a fish to climb a tree, right? It's easy if you love what you do, and that's the part that you added into your post was, look, maybe it's easy for me to handle the stress because actually I love it. It's a war that I enjoy fighting, right? If you love something and you're passionate about it, it's something you want to be doing, it becomes easier because all of the energy, you're not a salmon swimming upstream, right? You're flowing with the water. The obstacles are easier to overcome because the momentum is following you rather than coming up against you.
Well, you know what, Jay. I didn't put this in there, but I was thinking as because I wanted to sort of speak. And what's really interesting reading all the comments is there's one bit that touches everybody in a different way, and there's quite a few really passionate comments saying that's the bit, and actually they're all different bits, which is really, really nice to read. But what we didn't say is you need again channeling the inner Peterson. He says, well, we can't have a conversation that's worth having if we don't risk offending each other, because otherwise we're just staying within these parameters of weakness, really, where we can slap each other on the back for a few things, but we won't actually achieve anything, which I think is what we try and do every week, really, have a meaningful conversation. And I think you could apply a bit of that to stress and say, well, with no stress, life is without meaning to a large extent. So it just needs to be managed, and you need to be aware of it, and you need to be aware when you're taking too much of it, because the consequences of too much of it are the worst thing that can happen. But if we then say, well, do you know what I'll do then? Let's just boil that down to be reductio ad absurdum, I believe they call it. Let's just spend our whole lives in a flotation tank then. We don't do that, do we? Because, we probably go mad apart from anything else. So we do hopefully, and I think probably when you work for yourself and you've had a bit of a degree of success, you get to choose a lot of this stuff. So sometimes if I have a day where I think, I hope that we all still do it. I just think, why do I still do this? You just think, well, actually, remember, you love this, and you created the situation that led to that day. And then I try to be good at sort of stepping back out of that situation and saying, okay, so what are the events that led up to this happening? And how can I learn from them? Or how can I decide that I need to take more control so things like that don't happen, or less risk so things like that don't happen? Or there's always an answer in there somewhere. It's just that self-awareness and that I suppose that want to challenge, because I know that I've spoken to lots of vendors, for example, who they want to retire. Let's say they want to divest something because they want to retire, and they'll talk in a very direct and quite not aggressive, not defeatist, but they're very clear on the look. I'm just done. I want to go. Fed up with this. I'm not interested anymore.
Yeah.
And I sort of get that, but sometimes it's happened because I mentioned it in the post today, because they've got kind of an arbitrary goal of I'm 50 or I'm 55 or I'm 60 or I'm 65 or whatever it is, rather than thinking, okay, well, how do I sort of flow through this and deal with the fact that we all know on our birthday, for example, we're 1 year older in technical terms, but we're only a few hours older than we were the night before, so why do we let those things get into our head? And the top level of that is, how do I control what flows into my head? And am I spending time on TikTok, or am I spending time watching or listening to stuff about the economy, or am I doing a bit of both and I'm fully in control of that and I'm quite happy about it? And then is it, social media is a good example, is it working for me? Am I enjoying what I'm consuming, or am I getting upset because I'm seeing other things on social media that are putting negative thoughts and connotations into my mind? And again, the only way you can get around that really is you be aware of it, become aware, take control, take action. As simple as that.
And the point that you had about context, and I know it's something Jay talks about a lot, point 10, you need context to benchmark. Excuse me. It's that don't compare your day one with everybody else's day 1001, isn't it? And I think social media does that a lot. But what I was going to say about stress, and actually some stress being good, is that eustress, EUSTRESS, isn't it? That actually, I think when you're enjoying what you do, can help you thrive. So it's not that all stress is bad. In fact, actually, I'm going to put a link in the comments below later. There's a really good TED talk by Kelly McGonigal that talks about stress, and stress is only bad for you if you think it's bad for you. It's the way you think about it. So it's all about kind of like the framing of it. And I don't know if I 100% believe that, knowing the effects, God, I'm one person that can speak very personally from the effects of stress. It's why I left investment banking. So I know the effects stress had on my biologically and physiologically on my adrenal system. But it's a really good TED talk, very thoughtful.
I think in life, there's always lots of stress, and the key is, from what Adam said, is just choosing the stress you want to have, instead of letting be stressed by something that isn't that important to you, because stress makes us grow, right?
Yeah, and it's all how you kind of think about it, but also as Adam's said, if you're enjoying what you do, it almost it's that kind of immune system to stress, isn't it? You're enjoying it so you can cope with more. At the end, when I left banking, I hadn't enjoyed it, I'd say, for the past couple of years, and guess what, my body gave me an out. So
that's really interesting that you bring in sort of the body and the mind there, Helen, because you think about the basics of going to the gym or whatever. You're going to put muscles under stress. right? You're going to put your cardiovascular system under stress in order that, so it provides a temporary breakdown, and then it provides a built thing back up that's slightly stronger than it was before. And that's probably, there's some key words in there. I mean, you get, if you're lucky, you get some dopamine out of the process. And that's very, very similar to that mental tax we put on ourselves when we try to do something that isn't easy, ultimately, that isn't just like riding a bike or whatever. You know, you don't get in the car and think, right, I'm going to be a better driver at the end of this journey, but you might get in, although in reality, I suppose you are incrementally getting a little bit better as you do your 10,000 hours of driving or whatever. But you might want to start a big deal or a big development thinking, well, and especially in development, you know, you do this quite a lot. Well, have you ever bought a site with 3 or 4 different use classes on it before, where you need to go and renegotiate with 26 tenants, improve this, do that, do the other? Oh, and there's a pandemic. Well, spoiler alert, no, you haven't done that. But so you choose to do it or not to do it. And hopefully, if you do it well, you come out of that as a stronger and more experienced individual. And ideally, you've enjoyed the process. But in order to enjoy the process, like you pulled out there, you've got to contextualize these things, because am I doing this for a good reason? And this is why, you know, if I hark back to my MBA one more time, I realize I might get shot. But when I was at business school, we did a very honest exercise of sort of why are you here, to not a full existential why are you here, not a John Paul Sartre special sort of thing, but a why are you here? What are you trying to achieve from business school? And my answer was something like, I want to be better, I want to grow, I want to improve myself, I want to meet like-minded people, and I want to stretch myself and see what I can do. And some people's answers were, I just want to make as much money as possible in the shortest time possible. Not many. In 80 people or however many there were probably 3 or 4 that were thinking like that. And I've not read How to Make Friends and Influence People, obviously, because what I said was, I fear for you guys, because I think you'll never be happy. I think you'll never be happy if that's your true goal. And what I think you should do is ask yourself that question again 10 times every day until you come up with a different answer, because that's not all you want out of life. Because trust me, even at that stage, I realized I met people who did just chase dollars, and it was an unhappy cycle, because there's always more dollars to chase. Who's your you know, are you going to benchmark against Warren Buffett? I certainly don't. I just try and learn from him, you know. Are you going to benchmark against Elon Musk? Well, there's a guy who's got some interesting stuff going on in the personal life, you know, which we've seen bits and bobs of, which I don't really think any of us would want for ourselves, realistically. And he lives in that hour between robot and sociopath to an extent, with a dusting of utter genius built in what he does. But if you don't tell me he didn't enjoy, for example, well, I might just renegotiate on Twitter because there seems to be a few more bots than I thought, you know, masterstroke. Did he enjoy that? You could see on his tweets, he really enjoys some of that stuff, you know. It comes through quite, so, you know, he's living his best life to an extent within the confines of his personality type and his utter genius in general. But it's that wouldn't be that level of stress. Sleeping on the floor of the factory, you know, multiple failed relationships in fairly massive ways. I don't think that would be the life many of us would really choose, to be honest, you know.
No, and actually the goals thing is interesting, because there's something much more behind a stated goal of I just want to make loads of money, and unless you are purely driven from ego, but that's not actually most people, unless you are a sociopath or a narcissist. There's this AFest that I was just on, Vishen Lakhiani, he's got a book, Code of the Extraordinary Mind, and he talks about, and I've forgotten the exact phrase, but he talks about end goals, and he talks about goals that are, the word isn't intermediary, I've forgotten what the word is, But that's an intermediary goal. That's to get them something. What do they want to do with the money? What do they want that money to create? That's where they're going for. They've gone for a step on the way to the end goal, and they've called it a goal, but it's not. That's what you need to focus on. That's what's going to make you happy. I'll skip the link.
I think to give that a bit of a commercial tilt to it, if you like. You know, I talk loads about not being a motivated buyer because I think it's super important. Now, how do you how do you make sure you aren't a motivated buyer? Well, a lot of motivated buyers they've got the money angle too far at the front of their mind and think, I must do this, I've got to do this, I've got to make money. Whereas if you have different goals and you solve problems in different ways, then you don't always have that. I must do this. What if this deal gets away? Well, what if it does? What if it does? I'll tell you a few things of what it does. Number one, you're not going to make any money out of that deal. Certainly not now. Number two, you might have to address the fact that you have a feeling of failure that you've got to deal with. Okay, so that's into my tough conversations, right? Get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You've got to have a bit of that conversation with yourself, and or putting the right people around you with your very close peer network, business partners, etc., etc., etc. So there are things to deal with when you miss out on a deal, you know, and then where can you? It's also easy to shrug your shoulders and say, well, it wasn't my fault because of X or Y. Whereas really, I would encourage you that the answer is, let's go back through the major incidents, the major milestones here, work out why that didn't happen, and ask some questions. What could you have seen coming? What do you know for next time? What do you, not in a constructive way, of course, you're not in a beat yourself up kind of way, because in the same way, you know, we don't take that time necessarily to celebrate our wins. And, you know, we've talked a bit about that before. We really should do. We really should be more, you know, we sometimes are, you know, we talk about deals we've done on the session we have here, and that's good. We're hoping to share a bit of experience and knowledge with people, not as a big fanfare of look at us as the big I ams, whatever. There's positives in that, and it gives us a bit of an opportunity and a platform. And by again having the right people around you, you've got people who will go, oh, that's great to hear. Well done. Yeah. I'd love to do something like that, etc. And then you know you're also trying to find the people who are doing the things that you would like to be doing, and hang around with them, learn from them, you know, get some more detail from them, etc., etc.
That was my favorite point, actually. It's the one I wrote them all down and I circled that one. Surround yourself with and I put right people in brackets, because I think in property, I just think you need to really think what is right. I think in property, people can think, oh, there's this guru, there's this trainer, there's this person who's got the knowledge or appears to have the knowledge, and that's the right person. But is it? And are they the right person for you just because they are doing what you want to do or where you want to be? Does that mean that you're going to follow in their footsteps and do it their way? Because that's what I see a lot of people, and I've done it myself. You're like, oh, success or whatever it is looks like this, right? I'm going to follow what they didn't do it, and then you get halfway and you're like, oh my god, this is so not me. I can't do it that way. Yeah. Like I was talking, like, you know, we had all these speakers at A-Fest last week, and I want to do more like professional speaking, but I don't want to be one of those polished American, this is me, you know, God, oh my God, that's just not me. I want to do it, but I want to do it my way. And I've not found out how to do that yet, but I'm investigating. So I think the right people, I think that can be broken down even further. People who can help you, people you aspire to, people who are going to challenge you. I think that comes into what the right person is. People who will call you out on your bullshit. Which part of what you do for Boardroom Club, right? You're just like, are you sure about that?
Yeah, totally. And I think you've really, again, neuro-linguistic programming is something that, you know, years and years ago, I just thought, this is nasty stuff, you know? Whereas realistically, like anything in the world, it's well, there's a lot of pseudoscience around it that gets peddled in the property circles for a start, but you can't avoid the phenomenon of neuro-linguistic. I'm hoping when I'm speaking that you're listening to me, right? So we're already at level 1 there of neuro-linguistic programming, right? So we can't deny that it exists or it happens. It would be a good idea to try and understand it, not try and abuse some of the bits that get abused so badly on the property circuit. But, you know, when you see some people present and they go into this and it comes across as inauthentic. I don't think they realize that, because they're trying to follow a straight, you know, we'll walk to the left of the stage and we'll talk about the past, and then we'll walk to the middle and we'll talk about the present, and we'll walk to the right, and it's all just, it's just, I get bored of watching the same crap happen when it happens, unfortunately. But if you use with authenticity the way of getting audiences to listen to you, and what I would love to be able to do is also get people to implement more, because there is a ton of that shelf development, not self-development stuff that sometimes goes on. And I'm not saying you have to listen to everything you've heard on a course and go and do it, because you don't know the quality of the course, but there's no point putting in that time and not the time in how do I implement that for myself, you know. And you need to, there's levels of understanding and there's levels of working within an ethical framework to deliver. If you want to be a motivational speaker, for example, to deliver things in a way that will be seriously impactful for people. Whereas if you listen to, and it's funny because I wouldn't have thought Jordan Peterson would ever have thought himself as a motivational speaker, because he's like a boxer. He hits you with the hard truths of life and says, you've got this, you've got that, you've got the other. It is hard. You've got to make your bed before you go protesting, you student, or whatever, you know. But he gives it. But the thing is, if you look on YouTube, there's loads of motivational videos that people have made with Peterson content in there, because it's like, the way I'm going to motivate you is I'm going to give you a talking to, but it's a talking to that has got your best interests at heart and genuinely believes that you are the only person who can make those things happen for your life, which is often why people sling him onto the right-hand side of the conservative spectrum, which is realistically not true if you listen to a balanced amount of what he's said and done and observe his content. It is the hard truths of life. We can't sit and wait for the bazooka economics to save our sorry backsides, because at some point the bazooka's going to kill an innocent crowd of 100,000 people, unfortunately, because that's the way that bazookas work.
So it makes you look at kind of like the ugly things, right? You know, the stuff that is exceptionally very difficult to silver line or rose tint. And the problem is that people don't want to look at the ugly stuff. They don't, whether it's external or internal. External or internal. The last thing people want to do is look at themselves and go, "I'm a bit of a bastard," and then acknowledge the fact. Like, when are you a bastard? Why are you a bastard? Yeah. Can you recognize when you're doing it? Are you being fair in being a bastard? You know, or a bitch, whatever you want to be, right? Because, you know, it doesn't matter how much of a good person you are. Everyone is capable of going, right, dropping all of the ties that bind them and go, right, I'm a bastard for an hour. I've been pushed over the limit. Now we're in bastard territory. And no one wants to admit that. Everyone wants to be the polished, shiny, you know, the thing that Helen was mentioning, the polished, shiny thing, you know, the carbon copy of the latest person that's the best thing since sliced bread, you know, the followers, the latest blueprint of failure that you can follow. And I think that's what really gets to people, because no one is saying that this is not a popularist way to look at your life or to look at the world or to interact with other people or to interact with the world. And it's difficult. And the easiest way for people to diminish it and discredit it is to make it sound like it's oppressive, or it's like it's, you know, anti this or anti that, or bigoted this or bigoted that, and that's where he finds himself. But one of the brilliant things about him is, although he finds himself deeply entrenched in that and being told he's that and being pushed into that, he just carries on. And that is there's there's a rod of iron, a strength within that man that is admirable, because, and this is what you were saying earlier on, Adam, is you put yourself in this. He's put himself in that stress. He's like, no, I'm not going to bow or kowtow. I believe this is right. This is my reasoning. I'm not doing it to be hateful. I'm doing it because I'm looking at something ugly. I'm saying it's ugly. If you don't want to see the ugly side of it, then you're going to live a miserable life. But I'm looking at this ugly thing because I choose not to be miserable. And it's taking that kind of responsibility.
Yeah, talking about Peterson as well as sorry, 2 seconds. I've got some noise coming out.
Sounds like a still saw at some comment or something. Yeah.
Well, I was going to add to that, Jay, is that it's that the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek, isn't it? So we don't want to go digging around in this murky stuff, unless you're a bit sadistic, and maybe I am. Like, I've done courses, won't surprise any of you guys, on what haven't I done courses on, but on shadow work, where you have to go in and look at all that stuff, look at things that you've done, look at people that you haven't treated well, like really, and own that stuff. And actually, once you do, it's liberating. I think we think when we're going to delve into this, you go into this pit and you're just going to get sucked down and feel crap about yourself and beat yourself up, and you're never going to come up for air again. And it's not. It's the exact opposite. It's not fun. There's a lot of tears, by a lot of tissues. But actually, the other side, you're like, okay, you've owned that, and you can start the kind of the forgiveness work on yourself and on other people, which is totally liberating.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really, really nice. I'm just trying to think if there's any of them we haven't really. One thing that I started with, because it's something I've been observing this week, is expect people to behave as they are incentivized. And I think that kind of sprang back to mind when you were just talking then, both of you, because it's like and I've said this a number of times in a number of different situations to people over the years, in that my surprise is that you're surprised. Because ultimately, when you can, and I think it's something you have. Well, for me, it's something I've had to work quite hard on. But putting myself in other people's shoes to understand how they will act has given me an edge over the years in negotiating deals, apart from anything else. Yeah. So you can convince yourself that you're going to, for example, talk in the best way, be the best sounding person, maybe have the best track record and all the rest of it. And therefore, you're going to be able to offer whatever price you want for a deal, and someone's going to transact with you. That's not realistically possible, because a number of pragmatic things get in the way, such as how much do they owe against the property, how much this, how much that. Unless you can always be the only buyer in a situation, which would make an auction quite difficult, apart from anything else, then you're not going to achieve those things. So you're better off investing time in putting yourself in the vendor's shoes and thinking, right, okay, what's important to them? And you know what? Maybe even asking them what's important to them.
Exactly. Or maybe like your investors, you might want to ask that same thing too.
Yeah, because you're going to have to, that's it. So rather than, price certainty and speed, you might talk in terms of a vendor. You're probably going to transfer the certainty word still over and talk about returns, timing, control, security, etc. So, yeah, very, very much so. And if you aren't, then it's like you're having two conversations that are bypassing each other rather than having one meaningful conversation about a potential deal.
Exactly. And actually, if that point was understood, people are like, oh, how do you get investors? How do you get investors? People are not investing with you. Yeah, because you're talking from your framework. You're talking about what you want and the detail. You're not asking that question. You've missed out the fundamental parts, which is what I talk about. Piotr, you were going to say something before you were interrupted by your...
Yeah, I was going to say that obviously this conversation about Peterson and all the rules and everything that he touches on and the stress management is quite connected, because he had a breakdown moment as well, where he had lots of stress to deal with and lots of media and attention and stuff. And it's like I think when he talks about all those things, the rules and everything, it's like you can see that this is like implemented in his life, like he lives those rules. It's not just kind of him talking about something like that, and there's lots of authenticity in it, and I think that's why those rules come across like it's really powerful and really kind of people connect with it.
I think one of the reasons why he struck a chord with me some time ago was because he's so authentic. That sometimes sort of bleeds into a bit of naivety when the media, especially early on, and there would have been a lot of disappointment there when he goes out and tries to deliver his best message and do his best work. There's that now famous interview with Kathy Newman on Channel 4 where the interesting things about that were after that interview, Channel 4 were convinced they'd absolutely carved him up and shown him to be this terrible character, whereas in reality then popular opinion takes over because it's out there on the internet, and people say, well, actually, did he say anything that was wrong? Did he say anything that was misogynistic? Did he say anything that was racist? Did he say anything that was, biased against any trans people? I didn't hear anything. Did you hear anything? No, I didn't hear anything. Right, okay, so let's stop people calling out stuff that isn't there. And then there's a huge groundswell of movement saying, actually, do you know what? It's probably Kathy Newman who's overstepped the mark there. Yeah. And I mean, he even says in that interview, doesn't he? He says, you're trying to do your job. It's quite uncomfortable. I'm sure you'd agree. But I don't hold that against you. This is your job. It's your job to put me in a difficult position. And it really sort of flummoxes her because he's effectively calling out what journalistic methodology is of having an interview. And you don't sort of stop. So I sometimes use that if I'm framing a deal conversation with someone and sit down with the vendor. And I've as yet still not had anybody say no to this question. But we start with, right, okay, I'm here because I want to buy the thing that you're selling. You're here because you want to sell it. And presumably you want to sell it to someone who can transact and can complete and is going to do what they say they're going to do. Is that a fair framing of the conversation or whatever? And they all go, oh, well, yeah. But it gets you into that mindset of, okay, now we know what we're both here to do. Yeah. Let's now talk about what's going to stop that from happening. And, sometimes that powerful question of what are the things that are going to get in the way of doing this deal? It's by driving the conversation in that way that you can be quite effective without applying unnecessary pressure or anything like that. Just saying, okay, let's see. So where could things go wrong? The legal side of it, for example, the funding side of it. How do I put your mind at rest on those things? And how do we work from there? And then we've got a deal. We've got a deal structure, and then we're going to need to trust our professional services partners to drive it through, and us to drive them through the process.
But the even cleverer thing about that is that you've established a common goal. So effectively, you're both kind of on the same side. Yes, you're slightly either side, but actually the goal that you want to establish, you both want to get to, is the same.
Yeah. I was hoping for a bit more traction on preserve your sanity, not your vanity, to be honest. It just amused me that I'd managed to come up with a good rhyme, but I wondered if anyone would enjoy that, because again, I hear lots of things about you get. I'm going to say misappropriated. I think not in a way that's trying to achieve anything that isn't good or fair or right, but people, and I think we all do this, we have a tendency to look at something that we see, which if it's social media, inevitably it's a snapshot of something. We see something and go, that's because of X. And it's like, well, it isn't, is it? Because life isn't that simple, right? It's far more complex than that. And that's more Peterson, realistically. But people will go, right, okay, so that's happening because of this. And then they'll tell you, they'll say, right, you're doing this because of that. And you think, well, first of all, good feedback to take on board. Thank you. But I'm not sure you've got the whole point here, because, and then you start questioning yourself, and maybe you can have a meaningful conversation out of that. Hopefully you can, you know.
But it also goes to another point that you're saying, that actually, if you know your values, which point was that? Be honest. But actually, what you mean is know your values. You talk about values. If you know your values, you know why you're doing it, and actually, the other person's interpretation of what you're doing reveals their values. That's why, you know, you really need to listen to the people. I say this a lot to developers: listen to the words people use and listen to what they don't say as much, because if they don't say, or they don't come up with a reason which is one of your reasons for doing it, you've got different values. Now, that's not to say that that's not you know, that's not a bad thing. It's just different, right? You just need to understand that.
Well, so one of the complementary values, or they may be opposing values, right? So it's a case of seeing where the commonality is, and if those differing of values are either opposing or not, and people normally kind of just stop at that one point. It's like they only do X amount of the work, or only go through X amount of the steps, and they're like, okay, I've done all this hard work, and then now at the end, this is the decision. And that's where mistakes happen. I think it's we mentioned heuristics before, didn't we? Where we're just kind of like, you fill in the gaps and you just try and get to the end as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it's very true. Very true.
Number 11 for me was the one. This is the thing Piotr's been breaking my skull over for the last 2.5 years. Saying no. I'm an unbridled whore when it comes to just saying yes to people about anything. And it's a monumental distraction and potential waste of time and blah 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 blah. So now I've either started saying no, or I've started pushing people down a route where the time is used effectively, and normally not just effectively, but it actually forms part of chargeable hours, because most people just come and ask like an innocent question. And an innocent question is fine, but then I end up giving, you know, summary and discourse on the whole thing, and they walk away.
The question today is the 3-hour answer, at least, with like a gigantic amount of words they need to Google.
And there's normally a correlation between, like, when they say quick question. If it's a quick question, you can guarantee there is a longer. When somebody just comes with that question, you're like, yes, no, speak to so and so. But the quick question never has a quick answer.
I know one person who every once in a while will send me a message knowing that they've asked an unbelievably stupid question that will get on my nerves. It will get on my nerves enough to go into a 400,000 word response on, actually, this is the way you should, and they know what they're doing, and they know they'll catch me every time, because I can't let it go. So there you go, internet. You've now found a bit of kryptonite there. That's But I'm learning not to be goaded by that stuff so often.
Just stop reading emails.
That's you heard it, Piotr.
I just don't read emails. And now I tell people, if you want a response, don't send me an email.
One of my least favorite things of all.
Without saying no.
Someone will go. They'll send you an email, then they'll call you 12 minutes later and say, "Did you see that email?" And I'm like, "No, because I don't operate a 12-minute SLA for my email inbox." You know, and who the hell does? And if they do, have a word. You know, you must really love your BlackBerry still if you operate a 12-minute SLA for your email inbox. You know, it's crazy.
There's one gentleman in the industry. He's a lovable character. But he will, if he wants to get my attention, I will get the text message, the WhatsApp, the Facebook message. It'll be on LinkedIn. There'll be a follow-up email, and then I'll get the call. And this will all be within, a ridiculously short period of time. And by the time I've looked at the one, I've seen the other three, and it's pissed me off. And I'm like, right, I'm not responding to anything for 3 days. He's gonna think I'm dead. I'm not responding for 3 days. It's pissed me off so much that it's an assault on the senses. And I'm a bit neurotic in the sense that my phone hasn't got like unread notifications. I can't open up my phone and there be one notification. No, I deal with every notification that comes in, because if it's there, it's in the back of my mind. I can't concentrate on something, And this person must know that because there's 15 notifications from this one person. Drives me absolutely insane.
So that's why I turn them off. They're horrifically wired into our synapses, those things. Even all the way down to the use of the color red and the whole thing. And it's just like, do you know what? On my phone, I have a really, really rubbish way of accessing my email, which is deliberate. Because if I need to check my email, I'm going to have to make quite a big effort. It isn't pinging when I get one in. If I want to do it, I'll do it on my terms. Facebook notifications are off. WhatsApp notifications are off. It's like, no. Ring. You need something, ring me. It still works. It's a phone, ultimately. So let's not lose sight of the core point of the phone.
I do the same. I put all my notifications off because otherwise it's just like an easy distraction. You're just asking for a distraction, really, if you have notifications on.
Best thing I ever did. Claire Norwood told me that. I'm like, oh, you obviously didn't know how to do that. I'm like, right, everything's off.
And I like the point 15 as well, the gratitude. That's easily overlooked, and that's just like such an easy kind of redirection of energy. And a bench or another contextual tool, really, for this one thing has not gone the way that I want it to go. Okay, we can deal with that. Let's look at all this great stuff that is going on, and then realize, okay, so maybe we don't need to stress too much about that. We will fix it. It will work itself out in the medium term. And I talked about I was away for the night on Friday, so at 5 p.m. put my phone on a charger, on silent, whatever. Didn't look at it till 9 a.m. the next morning. I don't do that often enough. I say that, it sounds like a lot, 16 hours. And 16 and a quarter hours, I think it was. And guess what? Nothing was broken. No one had died. Everything was fine. Yeah. Hardly anyone had noticed because we always overstate our own importance, don't we? Hardly anyone had noticed. My wife had her phone with her in case anything was needed for the kids or whatever. That was all good. Worked perfectly. And
I nearly put on social media, which was really quite ironic given what I'm going to say, but one of my wins of while I was away, that I get those, I haven't worked out how to turn these notifications off, where they tell you how much screen time you've got. And my screen time last week while I was away was down 19%. And I'm like, yes! Just was really pleased about that. And I since got one this morning saying it's up 25%. I'm like, oh dear.
Is the going up worth the coming down? It's the eternal question, Helen. I missed that one out today, but it's the eternal question.
Nice, but I think the topic was really needed because it stimulated a lot of conversation. I even got a couple of private messages about us talking about this topic. So very, very useful, I guess.
Have we got any comments or questions?
We do have comments and questions. Some related, some not related. Let me just see. Comments. Cool. So, this is from Matt. Think how you manage it, and also how you pick yourself afterwards is what's important. And learning yourself what works to manage stress and spot warning signs early. Every day is
warning signs, key one.
That you can use Atomic Habits to change. Atomic Habits is a really good book. You guys read this?
Yes.
James Clear. Yeah. Very good. Very good.
Have you guys found yourselves in a point of focus so deep into something that actually warning signs are blurs? There are no red flags. You get that tunnel vision and you just keep going until you get to where you need to go. And then you get there because chances are, if you've got a good sphere of competence or good people around you, you're going to get there. And you end up and you get there and it's finished. You're like, I should be happy. I should be elated. But in reality, everything feels heavy. You're completely drained.
Oh, absolutely. That definitely happened to me years ago. I set someone told me off because I hadn't set any goals. We're going back probably from memory, 8, 9 years, something like that. And might have been 10 years. and I hadn't set any goals. So what I did is I set some goals, and I achieved them for the year by about October the 1st or whatever. And then I felt really, really empty after I'd done that. And there was a few reasons for that, reflecting on it now. I always realised that one of the things that had gone wrong is I didn't set any more goals. But it was much more of a problem than that. Because what I did was I did what somebody else wanted me to do.
Exactly.
And therefore, what satisfaction did I get from doing what somebody else wanted me to do or thought I should do? I've had lots of people over the years say, for example, you could go and work for X, you could have gone and worked for Y. And I've just thought, yeah, but I've made a relatively conscious decision not to do that. And thanks for your concern. But, you know, I don't exist to make McKinsey another £1 million in billable hours a year, you know, or £5 million in billable hours or whatever, because that's not what I've been put on the planet to do, in my opinion. So, you know, the arrogant side of my personality knows that, you know, realistically. But the bit that takes control says, no, thanks, you're all right.
Yeah, and you're happy with like what you do and your life. And actually just something I was going to add on the gratitude list. Like I just had a bit of a wobbly week last week and was like, oh, you know, usual existential crisis. This is nothing unusual for me. You know, like, oh, where do I go? What do I do next? And a friend messaged me on, I think I put the picture of Petra on, which is beautiful. If you've not been, everybody must go. On Insta or something. She messaged me and she's like, I want your life.
You don't.
And it was that like slap across the face that was like, you know, I'm just living when it's you living your life, you're like, this is just what I do. You know, there's no husband, kids, like 9 to 5. I do just jump off and go here and everyone. And that's just my life. So that's quite normal for me. But to realize that actually that is somebody else's dream and you get to live that every day. Let me tell you, that was a huge gratitude moment for me. So thank you to my friend that messaged me.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, in reality, when someone looks at your life and thinks, "Oh, that's the life I want," it's kind of like it's the iceberg that sank the Titanic, isn't it?
Yes.
It's the nice little bit that's reflecting the light, because that's what icebergs do. They reflects the light and it looks shiny, and maybe there's a polar bear on there or a couple of penguins skinny diving or whatever it is, right? But the reality is, it's a fucking mass of everything that's gone right, gone wrong, good, bad, negative, experiential, existential.
Yeah.
You just think, I think, you know, there are some people in the industry that get hero worshipped and like, oh, this guy is the blah, blah, blah. And I know I did a post the other day where I was like, oh, you know, Adam's brilliant and Rod's brilliant. Genuinely, I think they're brilliant. That's not hero worship. These are people that I think are like, you know, their peers they're in the friend group, they're in the group, blah, blah, blah.
Mutual admiration, my friend. Mutual admiration.
That's the one. But it's kind of like you see these people getting hero worship, and they're people like, oh, I wish I could do this, that, and the other, and I wish I could live that person's life. It's like you've not got the tiniest slither of what this person's makeup of their life is to want it. You know, you should want to live your own life, be your own person. You know, and that's a hard thing, because if you want to live your own life and be your own person, that's a completely different path. That's a road less traveled, because a lot of people are just going to go on that super highway of what you're told to do. You go to school, you go to university, you get the high powered job, or you do that's the super highway that everyone travels, right? And then if you're like, okay, if I want to be that person, they don't realize that you're completely off piece. You know, you're on a black diamond course going down fucking whatever mountain cliff it is in Switzerland. I can't remember what it's called. But you know, you're on that route and it looks amazing. But it's fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
It's scary shit.
Yeah.
And I think was it Sam Lowney, who's a good friend, he did a post the other day. He goes, the journey of an entrepreneur, and it looks like the day-to-day is this, and it drops back and it goes down, and it's all these, and it's true. Like it's not a straight line. It's not a straight line. But people, they look at the trips to Petra, and they look at all these other things. They think, because that's aspirational stuff.
Yeah.
But for you can go on that thing because you've done 6 months of, you know, killing yourself every day to do the due diligence on this, get that deal done. Blah, blah. And you're like, right, no, I'm 6 weeks, I'm off. It doesn't matter where I'm going, what I'm doing. I'm going to completely reset.
And that's it. When we have that envy of other people's lives, it's like, actually, if you want the life, you have to take the downsides as well. Do you want the existential crises? I don't recommend them, but you knock yourself out.
Absolutely.
It's like the grass is always green on the other side. Don't focus on the fucking grass. Like, there's other things to do. Try looking up. Try looking ahead. Stop looking down.
Try looking inward at what what you want, not what you think you should be doing, or what your mum wants you to be, or what your next door neighbor, what car they have got. Like, what do you want? What's genuinely important to you? And that sometimes takes bravery to own that, to say, no, I'm not playing that game anymore.
I think Jay, the next book needs to be written. Don't fuck it up. The title, Don't Fuck It Up. The collection of wisdoms of Jay Howard.
Yeah, I'd read that one for sure. I want signed copy number 1, please.
That's it. Dominic's been sharing. Will did a couple of posts recently on the UK Property World chat, and there was one like after it said, and we just started talking, and then it kind of steamrolled. Then Dominic got involved, and then he just starts kind of listing all of my kind of one-liners on, like, okay, yeah, don't fuck it up, which is, it's a simple philosophy, but it's kind of like, if you take your eye off the ball or you get distracted, it's easy for things to fuck up. Not that you fucked it up, but it's one of those, you got to take ownership of it, so you don't actively fuck it up.
Yeah.
So this is definitely not going to make the watershed, I don't think. Oh dear.
Nice.
Have we got anything else, Pierre?
There was a comment that disappeared. It was a comment about something else. Maybe we can. To be honest, we pretty much talk about this every week, and it might not be the comment for the end of the show. So we'll stay here till 12. But then, as there's a question about the real estate bubble, prices of houses going up, shortage of goods, rents up, materials up. So I think that's a conversation maybe for next week, possibly to tie it into a lot of things.
Well, spoiler alert, where's the bubble realistically? We've not enough heat in the market to have a bubble quite yet. We've had a bit of a catch up on the last 15 years, but one way or another, it's hard to see too many bubbles, I'd say. But you have to look at, Rod put a good post up this week about not necessarily recessions, but inflationary times and how house prices performed against inflation. But people have got to remember that huge gap. When your inflation's 10%, you've got a huge gap between nominal and real that people forget about. So it's like the old sitting and waiting for prices in them. Imagine if you sat in a supermarket waiting for the price of pasta to come down at the moment. It might be quite a disappointing, 24 days before you die of starvation or whatever. You could have a similar experience in property if you're not careful.
Interesting. Very well put together. Brief answer to such a massive question. Nice one. Cool. Well, there hasn't been any other posts, I think, that we missed. So yeah, this is it for this week, I guess. Very entertaining.
On location next week.
Yes, next week is a special one. Next week we're gonna do a live. So we're sitting together in a sunny location in Malta. So myself, Helen, and Jay will be there. Adam,
a couple yet to be convinced. That post tells me someone's looking for a couple of days to let some steam off. So,
I saw your one comment. I was like, I like what you've done there, Jay. Very good.
Not that you need it. The fact that we want you there is obviously the primary indicator, but it's yes. Yeah.
We'll see how closely my wife follows these posts, won't we? That's the best thing.
Come on, Joey, let him out to play.
I'm an expert in our team for having conversations with wives of people that I need to get out.
Yeah, Piotr normally. I send Piotr in.
Extraction specialist.
Piotr's the grenade I throw at my wife. Like, oh, you need to. We had to like go and do something. I was like, she's not going to agree to this. He goes, I will talk to your wife. 2 minutes later, yeah, it's a great idea. Off you go. I was like, how did you do that?
Don't call him the dentist for nothing. Look at it that way.
Yeah. He's the extractor.
Oh, nice. I'm looking forward to it next week. And thanks everyone for your input today. And have a great Sunday.
Great chat, guys. Thank you.